Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Success Innovation. Today we talk about dealing with difficult people at work and school. Let's get started. Well, thank you for joining Cafecito Chats once again. Today we're going to talk about dealing with difficult people at work and or in school, right? It's very interesting how wherever you go, you're going to be faced with difficult situations, and you're going to be working with team environments, be it in school, be it at work. You're always going to be faced with differences of opinions, and some individuals are a little bit harder to work with. They're more opinionated, and they give you a hard time, or they have their perspective that they really want to defend, and that's something that you have to begin navigating. And one of the other things that also affects life is when you're actually at work, and your manager is the difficult person, and or you're a manager and you have a difficult employee. How do you deal with those individuals? Those are very difficult things to navigate in the workspace. So I'm going to get started with Lourdes. Thank you for jumping in the conversation. Based on the topic at hand, dealing with difficult people, have you, when you were in school, dealt with difficult individuals, be it on a team, be it on a class, be it on a project, and how did you deal with that, Lourdes?
Hi everybody. Yes, I dealt with a few difficult teammates in one of my projects back in college. I mean, we tried to talk about it and be better about it, but it really wasn't improving into a point where I just asked to be transferred into another group.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
had to take that hard decision of asking, can I transfer out of this particular group? You had that option. So in that case, it kind of worked out. But there's other instances where you're part of a team and either you're working on that team at the job. Sometimes that's a little more difficult. So the same question, Lourdes, in the team or industry environment, have you worked in a team environment where you have had to deal with difficult people? And how did that fare? How did you deal with that?
I've had a few instances where like it's really difficult working with an assembler in the work instructions because they see it one very specific narrow way and I'm trying to make it general. So I think we try to compromise as much, like meet in the middle, like try to put as much as the details as needed, but it also needs to be kind of tailored to the general like public in a way. So like a halfway compromise.
Okay, so for that one, there's really no, you can't, there's no way that you transfer out. You don't, you have to get this done. So you find a way to communicate and meet in the middle per se, right? And or try to convince the other person to meet in the middle and make sure that you continue moving forward. So that's something that you have to deal with and make sure that you continue moving forward. So I hope that I captured this correctly, Lourdes. Is that accurate?
Yes, it's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So communication is very, very key. And sometimes when we're in school, we're like, I don't really want to present. No, I want to focus on designing and making sure that everything works and doing the calculations and whatnot. But believe it or not, in the industry, in engineering, there's a lot more communication, a lot more writing that takes place than you would like. And that really is something that we see when we get out from school versus being thought that that's part of the norm and part of the format. Yes, you do a lot of report writing in school. However, you assume that that's not going to be your primary job. Lourdes, any insight or perspective, hindsight on how communication, be it verbal, written, and or presentation, has played a huge or not such a huge role in your job, in your career so far?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, communication, be it in presentation format, written format, how has that played a role within your career path at this moment versus what you thought when you were in school?
So I when I was in school, I wrote a lot of reports in general for my labs and stuff. Like I always had maybe 3 to 4 every week or every 2 weeks or something. At work, it's more simplified bullet points, concise information. So I do quarterly meetings about like some data and how it's doing, like products and stuff, and it's very much to the point, success, failure, improvements, results. It's very concise for upper management.
And you have to be able to communicate that quickly and effectively to the management, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Victor, you used to work and you're still, considered an alumni and part of the team for the Rocket team at UCSD. But the question to you is, did you deal with, through your 4 years of being at that team or any particular team, with difficult people, difficult teammates, and how did you deal with that over the years?
Yeah, thankfully in RPL, I didn't really have that issue. But for example, in one of my lab courses, one of my lab teammates, he kind of had difficulty communicating on paper, like his results of, for example, a lab report, and kind of having to walk him through the process. Okay, like, hey, what are you trying to say so that like I could rewrite it so that it actually makes sense. That was very time-consuming effort that I had to do. And then by the end of the quarter, thankfully, he got a lot better at communicating and just kind of sitting down with him and saying like, "Hey, man, you need to write like full sentences for me to be able to understand what you're thinking." And I think that's the only time I've had a kind of a bad experience with a teammate.
So once again, communication, be it written, verbal, plays a very key role within engineering in what I'm seeing. Is that accurate from your perspective, Victor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, okay. So now that you graduated, has your perspective changed on how important communication is? I know we're talking about difficult, working with difficult people, but sometimes working with difficult people is just a matter of communicating well with those individuals and making sure that the message you're trying to deliver is well received and understood. So once again, we go back to that communication aspect, be it written or be it verbal. Did your perception change over the 4 years, 5 years that you were at UCSD about you, an engineer, just focusing on designing and more focusing on clearly presenting your ideas and communicating them well? Or was that never a problem for you?
Yeah, I think it's become a lot more important, especially like as I moved up in RPL, like from becoming a lead, being able to communicate your ideas effectively so that other people that are maybe don't know much about the subject can understand what you're saying and somewhat the I guess the design considerations that you're going to implement in your design. And also even more now when I'm like applying for jobs, being able to communicate like what I'm doing where to people that don't know anything about me, I think is super important to make sure that, they're able to understand what I guess the work that I've done.
Okay. Thank you, Victor. Great insight, great perspective. Andrea Martinez, I hope you can turn on your mic. It's been a while since I've seen you around. So thank you for joining. If not, congratulations, Andrea. For those who don't know, just recently got married. So congratulations in that. It's been like what, 1 or 2 weeks from what I can remember. So congratulations on your wedding. You have recently, within about a year or so, gotten a full-time position as a mechanical engineer. I believe it's more of the resourcing or product chain effort, and I just want to congratulate you on that. Topic at hand, dealing with difficult people. Have you ever had an experience of dealing with difficult people, be it in school, be it as part of SHIP, or be it in your real job now as an industry member? Andrea?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I actually got married this weekend.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. And I'm actually a material analyst at K's by Honeywell. Um, I have not had any circumstances here yet. I've only been here about a month and a little bit. Um, I think in general, if you are seeing that you have a lot of difficult times with everybody around you, sometimes maybe you have to look at yourself as well, because I have had that happen to me where I'm like, okay, so this is going on, this is happening, this person is being a handful, this person's being a handful, and then I like look at myself and I'm like, okay, this is probably on me then, because it's not that everybody's being difficult, it's that I'm the one who's having an issue as well. But dealing with other difficult people, I think during SHIP, as my time as president at USD, um, I did have a situation with one of the people that were traveling with us to one of the conferences. And I think the best way that we handled that was as a team, sometimes just reaching out to your team and all of you. I don't want to say like um, ganging up on anybody, but just like talking to everybody or talking to them as a team. That is very helpful.
Great. So one of the things, the big idea that you brought up, Andrea, is if you're having difficult people around you, maybe looking at yourself and evaluating, am I the difficult person in this situation? Can you walk us through how did you actually turn around and say, maybe I'm the difficult person? How do you come to that realization, and how do you go about evaluating yourself in that regard?
I think, first of all, looking at your stress level overall sometimes is just really helpful, because sometimes it's not that you are a difficult person, is there's circumstances in life that cause you to be more difficult than other times or cause you to have more stress on yourself. So sometimes just seeing how much is on your plate, and if everybody around you keeps, I guess, bothering you in some way, or something that they're doing is bothering you, or you feel like somebody else is being difficult. And it's multiple teams. It's not just your personal team or one team. You are doing a project in, let's say, a class and then a different class, and every single team is, you are having issues with the entire team, then it's probably you, you know? And sometimes just being able to analyze yourself, I think getting to know yourself really well is very important. Um, and just being able to be self-aware. That's the word I was looking for. Self-aware of who you are and when you are struggling as well. Because sometimes it's a struggle. You're trying to balance a lot of things at the same time. And that's why you're being difficult, because you don't know how to do it. And yeah.
That's a good insight, and if I can add to that, we all try to do the best that we can, and yes, Andrea, there's some instances where we're burdened with outside stress, and we keep that stress, and sometimes we bottle it up, and it just kind of explodes in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, we interpret that, oh, this other person is being difficult, and if you go to a mentor or an objective third party person and you bounce ideas off of them and you say, I'm really having a hard time with this group or this individual, this set of people. And you have to be with that other person. You have to be transparent and receptive to their advice. If that mentor tells you, well, hold on a minute, if the common denominator in here, it's you, if you're working with two or three different teams and there's always differences of opinion, there's different conflict, different situations, why don't we sit back and take a look at what you're going through, what's going on with you? Maybe you're the one that's actually, that individual that's the difficult creating that situation. So it's really hard to actually receive feedback like that. And I want to see it from Ken. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you can turn on your mic. Hopefully you can. Have you
Yes.
had to sit back and evaluate yourself and determine whether you're the one that actually is being a little bit difficult in some instances? Has that ever happened to you? And if it has, how did you deal with that, Ken?
Yes, that's a great question. And actually the answer to that is absolutely. often too, because I do have conflicts with others as well, both at like at a school setting or a work setting. And sometimes I think it's the other person, and sometimes it is. But sometimes I also think it's part of it is me, and it's not because I think I'm being problematic. I think it's just because of my, my ethnic identity or my own perception of the United States. We are in the United States, but that doesn't mean that maybe perhaps the United States is the best place for me, because there's different environments in other, and I know that I have different work ethics from other countries that other people might have no idea about. So, for me, I keep that in mind in my own head, and I always think, how do I portray myself? How do the other people can perceive me? What do I do that can be misinterpreted by the other person? And then when I do that, then I do what everyone else has also been talking about the communication. I try to be as communicative as possible. Sometimes that works well when I'm direct with the other person that may be some type of conflict, and sometimes it doesn't work out. And I also do exactly what Andrea was mentioning about like not ganging up on someone, but like just doing it more as a group. So sometimes if it doesn't work out as a direct communication, I try to ask the perspectives of other people in the same team or in the same, at least work environment, not necessarily in the same team. And I ask for their opinion and their point of view on the situation, and even just on us, like independently, like if they think my behavior was okay, or if the other person's behavior okay. And it's happened several times, and sometimes it is the other person, and when I feel like sometimes maybe some parts could be me, I always try to improve myself and see what can I do better, how can I communicate better, what can I do different. And then I'm constantly trying to do that so that I can also be a good employer, a good person, or at least in terms of behavior, I mean, and be more productive and keep on with the objective of work or the class, or whatever the objective may be. So again, it goes back to communication, and it goes back to self-awareness as well. Yeah, so I definitely agree. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
That's great insight, great perspective. Momina, I don't know if you can turn on your mic. If you can, that'd be great. But thank you for joining us. And the question at hand is dealing with difficult people, be it in school or be it at work. And it seems that she cannot, or yes, there she goes. She turned on her mic. Thank you for joining us. Um,
Uh,
Hi. Yes.
yes, hello everyone. So I want to tell the situation when I was in college as a
Yes.
student, when I had a few conflicts with my group mates in one of the projects. Actually, they were in 90 and 20 years old, and I'm a little bit older than them, and also a mom with two kids. So my goal was for the day to wake up early and get my stuff done early uh, before um, and then my classmates, because they were younger, and they sleep until 11 or 12. So we work on a project, and it was hard for me to schedule some meeting with them, because I prefer like early in the morning, but they prefer like 3 or 4 p.m. But I decide one day to sit with them, talk with them, and explain my situation to them. So that's, I'm a mom. I have like work hard in early in the morning, and then I want to get done our project like early. And they were nice. They listened to me, and we worked together. And after communicating, we resolved the issue.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great
Yeah.
example, Momina. And, just a personal example as well. I'm also taking a master's course. And you're right. Some individuals do prefer to do it later on or procrastinate, or maybe there's no real set ground rules from the very beginning. So they assume that, oh, as long as we get it done the night or the day of that is due, it should be sufficient. But some individuals aren't operating like that. We have different things, different schedules, and we have to do it before we actually are burdened with the deadline coming up and
Yeah.
up on ourselves, right? So what I end up doing, similar to what you did, I immediately the first day of class or the first session to my team, to my group, I send ground rules and assumptions. Ground rules is this is when we expect if the material is due or the assignment is due. This is the timeline that I anticipate that we should work towards, and we come to a consensus, an agreement, compromise. If we're going to be doing team meetings, group meetings, communicate right off the bat. This is my preferred time. Can we have a schedule of everybody? If you have a different preference on daytime, and because I'm doing this online, it's also various different time zones. So I get people who are in the East Coast, and to be respectful, I can't be doing meetings, or we can't be doing meetings at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. at night Pacific time, because that means that it's 10, 11 p.m. on the East Coast. So I got to be respectful of that. So as long as you communicate with the team, with the individuals, and you set those ground rules and expectations, and everybody agrees to them, you'll consistently be able to refer back to that agreement, say, hey, remember that meeting that we had where we actually agreed, this is what we agreed upon. And once you have that level, everybody will be able to accommodate, to be able to continue moving forward and making that team a success, right? And one of the things that ends up happening, sometimes your manager or your boss or your lead tends to be the difficult person, or giving you a little bit of difficulty, and or you're clashing with what they're requesting. So I'm gonna lean back on Lourdes. Have you ever had that experience where you actually have had a difficult manager, difficult supervisor? How did you deal with that, Lourdes?
Um, I've been very blessed in the way that I've never really dealt with a difficult manager, but I think I also tend to study them like the first week or two on how do they communicate, what style do they do, like do they prefer over communication, not over communication. So I ask clarifying questions about anything that we're talking about just so I'm sure and I'm good. But yeah, we pretty have a pretty good like open communication style.
There's some instances where you actually will encounter managers that, one, in the job industry, they can't just simply say, I don't like you, I'm going to fire you. So they end up collecting data and resources to prove that your performance is poor, right? So one of the things we talked about in an earlier episode is your performance evaluation on an annual basis. And if that, for some reason, you get put into a P performance improvement plan or a PIP, that's a bad situation. So if you're in that path and you know that your manager, for some reason, you're not really working out with them, or it's not really happening, you're not jiving, you're not synchronizing with them, that's a difficult situation to be in. How do you approach that if you're in the job, right? Obviously, you can't say, oh, I quit, I'm going, and this is no good. You could definitely do that if that's something you want to do. But for a lot of us, it's a livelihood. We need to have a job. If you are not financially secure, you're strapped for having a job, so you can't just quit and pick up and go. One, because you don't have any financial income coming in unless you have a savings account that is holding you up for the next 6 months or so. Then yeah, sure, you can definitely do that. But another way to do it is, one, I would approach maybe a director, a senior level individual that you trust within that company, and be candid, open with them, and tell them, hey, I'm really having a difficult time with this particular manager, supervisor, lead. How do I deal with it? They will probably know a little bit about that particular person. They will probably know their management style, as Lourdes indicated. You should know a little bit about who and what management style they have and they like to navigate, and maybe adjust to it, right? If you cannot figure that out, maybe go to human resources and have a conversation with them and tell them, this is what I'm doing. I'm really trying the best that I can. And when you actually approach human resources, that's a big step. If you approach human resources, go prepared with, this is my job expectations, this is my task, this is my requirement, and take that list with you, right? And tell them, I believe and I am meeting my expectations, job requirements by doing this I perform, I am doing and meeting those expectations day in, day out. If there's any question about it, definitely make sure that you bring some examples of what you're stating so that you can present to human resources. You could do a, case study to be opened by human resources to monitor the situation, to see that relationship between the manager that you have and yourself, and see what type of guidance there is. Or you can even put a formal request to be transferred to another department. That means that your manager will be contacted by human resources. They will be asked to go ahead and lend you out to another group. And if that other group, the manager from that other group will have to evaluate you for a period of time, and they'll feed that information back over to human resources on your performance for that particular effort. If the performance is on par with what the other manager said you were not or you were doing, that's going to be a difficult thing for you to face, because then that means that you're definitely the person that's the one that's conflictive and not necessarily the manager. So it could be a double-edged sword in that sense. But those are kind of ways to work around, try to figure it out in the job place, in the industry, in your career level. So hopefully that makes sense. And it is a very difficult situation, but once you go down this particular path for you to try to finagle this situation with a manager that is difficult, it's going to be something that you have to face. And you can definitely get guidance from your HR personnel, but also get guidance from outside mentors. Don't do this by yourselves. Get some support before you go to HR and ask questions, talk to people, make sure that you're level set before you move on and take this approach in that regard. So hopefully this makes sense. And I know this dealing with difficult people at work and in school is a topic that normally doesn't get brought up too often. It does happen a lot, and we have to deal with this situation quite a lot. So a lot of it has to come down to the way you communicate. I believe it was Andrea and or Lourdes who mentioned that you have to figure out the person's way of communicating. Some people like to communicate in a verbal format. Some people like to communicate in the written format. So you just got to make sure that you understand how that individual or those individuals actually communicate better and what is more suitable for you to actually communicate with them in that format as well. So sometimes we have to adapt and we have to shift and we have to make sure that we do what is best for us during that particular time. If you don't feel that, okay, maybe this team is not for me, but you're strapped for having that particular job, once again, look around. There's possibly other openings. Ask to be lent out to another position to see and try that out. So hopefully that makes sense. Around the room right now, Lourdes, any comments or questions from you?
No, this is insightful. It's a continuous battle, so yeah.
Yep, awesome. Andrea Martinez, any questions from you?
No, I think you covered everything.
Okay. Ken, thank you for joining. Any questions from you? Any additional comments?
No questions, but I do want to comment that I had memories as everyone was sharing, their perspectives and their stories, because I've had a lot of moments where I've had problems with other people, both at work and at school. And I think a lot of what everyone said, I've also done in the past, and it's really helped me, especially the communication and the self awareness. And what you said about HR, and also about having even a manager, I've also had that experience. And for me, just being communicative directly with the manager, it can be kind of scary. I also will communicate, and it's alleviate over time, even though perhaps at a specific moment it can get a little stressful, or actually very stressful and intimidating too. But that's something I wanted to comment.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Ken. Yeah,
Yeah.
great insight, great perspective. I don't know if you have more time, but do you want to share a little bit about how you dealt with that difficult manager or lead during that particular time?
Actually, in my job at Sector, like I don't want to, like, what types of things, but it, like, just like you mentioned about performing review and how perhaps some might like you, I experience. I think the manager just didn't like me. Like, there was another coworker that also didn't like me, and so they both talked. I saw them both talking, and then they both talked to me about performance review. So I felt like they both, one of them was a manager, one of them was not, and I felt like they kind of teamed up, and they just kind of kind of hit me with performance reviews, type of thing congruent to my company, and I just didn't think it was very appropriate the way they kind of talked to me, because one of them kind of raised their voice, and I didn't like that. I thought that was a little bit outside of the professional scope. So based on my experience and what I felt comfortable with, I was very approative to the manager, and also communicated myself and expressed myself, even though I was a little bit shocked at the moment and a little bit intimidated, like, oh, why is this manager raising his voice at me? Like, but then I also kind of responded and let my point be heard and my perspective be heard. And then I also included another manager, because that manager was not really my direct manager. I had another direct manager, so we had a came into the whole review, and I direct manager thought my performance review was great. And so over time, I still talk with this manager, but we still have, I think, this memory in both of our minds. So every time we communicate with her in the background. So now communicator, when he tells me something or I tell him something, I feel like when both without saying any words, like, we have that at the flashback, and we try to watch our words more carefully so that we don't repeat like some type of raising our voices at each other, or having us communicate about our feedback more respectfully against with each other. So over time, I think it helps. But at a certain situation, sometimes it may be more convenient to just, try to pick your words very carefully, of what to tell each other, and to keep it within the professional scope when you're, on a working. If I think that if does that provide more
Yeah,
information?
correct. And it added a little
Yeah,
more
yeah,
insight
yeah, yeah,
because you did bring up something
yeah.
that I don't think we had mentioned. If you are dealing with somebody that is difficult and you don't feel quite comfortable talking one on one, right? You can bring a third party just for having objectivity and having an individual that is there as a witness as well, just in case things start getting a little heated. That way that person can, one, stop the situation, and or two, make sure that you deal with and de-escalate the situation if it's starting to get a little heated. So that's something that you can definitely do. If it's within the workplace, then that could be HR. But if it's within the school space, you could bring your advisor, your teacher, professor. That way they can definitely give you some guidance and some direct the conversation a little more professionally in that sense if you're dealing with difficult individuals. And that way, the conversation does not escalate into yelling and or screaming, if that's what we mean by escalation in this particular case, right? So Jorge Sosa,
Yes,
good day,
and
sir.
then
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
yes, the last thing I was gonna comment to that is that sometimes, there's that one phrase that said sometimes when you have a situation, I think the phrase is don't poke at it or don't peck at it. But in my situation, I try to do a little bit of the opposite. I do try to kind of peck on it, but peck on it on a professional setting. Keep going towards it, be direct. I'd like to do a direct approach because I feel that if you also ignore it, sometimes ignoring it kind of makes it worse sometimes because then it may hinder your objective, like your job performance. Instead of meeting your objective, you might affect your performance if you're always thinking about, oh, this situation, it's haunting me, or it's preventing me from working safely. And sometimes it's about clearing those obstacles so that you could be safe, because in certain work environments, you might be in a lab and the lab might not be safe. Like, you might not be safe if you're not concentrated on the what's in front of you. So sometimes, for that reason, I always like to be a little bit confrontational. But I also, when I do that, I like to also be as professional as possible so that I don't go, outside those, scopes that gets more personal.
Thank you for
Yeah,
your
yeah,
insight, Ken.
thank,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Jorge, thank you for joining us. Thank you, sir. We're talking about dealing with difficult people at work and or in school, and we were talking about how to navigate that the conversation, and or how to mitigate the problem and or de-escalate a situation where you're starting to have more of a race boy scenario. Jorge, any thoughts or insights from your perspective, sir?
Absolutely. First of all, apologies for being late. Just got wrapped up some stuff here at work. But the gentleman that was speaking before, I think he kind of hit the nail on the head, right? You have to address issues. The longer you let things sit, they start stinking. So definitely, as communicating people your limitations, what you're comfortable or not comfortable with respect to how people are treating you, talking to you, just general interactions, I think is key, right? You kind of set the tone from the beginning. I know the way I carry myself, both personally and professionally, is there's certain lines that I don't cross. There's certain jokes I don't make. There's certain things that I'm okay with discussing and not discussing. And when somebody approaches those lines for me, I let them know immediately, hey, you know what? I get it, man. Maybe it's normal to you, but I don't play like that, or what have you, but it definitely, I think you start setting the tone from the get-go, and that allows you in the future, when you do have to deal with those difficult people, to make that conversation easier, because they know, one, they're not just going to push you over. They're not just going to try to laugh it off, or like say, hey, you're just being weak, or you can't take a joke. It's like, no, man, that's not something that I joke about. You can joke about everything else you want, right? But this is my line, whether you like it or appreciate it or not. It's my line, and I'm letting you know, not cool. We can, and then carry on. In the case of escalating conversations, calm heads prevail. Uh, you have to keep your cool, because if not, then you become the guy that becomes a problem, and then now people are uncomfortable around you, because you're going to be the guy guy or gal that's escalating things. So definitely keeping your head cool, definitely addressing issues early, though, I think is the best conflict resolution, right? Not being afraid of conflict, addressing it immediately, and just letting people know where you stand, with regards to those sort of things. If that makes sense?
Yes, thank you, sir. That's great, great insight, great perspective. Momina, any comments, questions from you at this moment?
The only comment that I have, that was a great topic. Thank you everyone for sharing.
Thank you, Momina. Great insight. Victor, any comments or questions from you, sir?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting how you mentioned like how to deal with difficult like managers and like that. That's something that I've never experienced and I never thought about.
Yeah, the more you work, the more time you have in the workforce, you're gonna encounter some situations, and definitely, this whole topic is for bringing awareness and maybe having some idea of how to approach a certain situation. In this case, dealing with difficult individuals at work and or in school. It could be your manager, it could be your peers, it could be your direct supervisor, it could be somebody that you definitely can't really just get away from immediately. So having that third party, having that navigation with HR conversation is something that you can deal with, right? And at the end of the day, what I've come up with from here, and I hope everybody takes, is learning how to communicate better, right? Be it presenting, be it communication via email in a written format, be it how to approach somebody, what moment to communicate to them your personal feelings, your situation, your expectations. If you're a lead, you're a manager, also communicate the expectations from your employees. And if you're an employee, communicating to your manager what you work and your expectations of them are. That's something that needs to take place as well. So that way they know, they understand who you are, where you're coming from, and there's no surprises in the future. So that's more or less setting the tone, as Jorge said, from the very beginning, making sure that everybody's aware of what the expectations are, and that way you're not being necessarily a difficult person yourself. As Andrea mentioned early, being able to look in the mirror and being able to determine, am I the common denominator here? Am I the actual person that's being difficult? And being receptive to changing and adapting yourself to make sure that you're not that difficult person, and accepting that maybe you're overstressed, you're overburdened by something external, be it at home, be it from work. So just got to make sure that you understand that yourself as well. So finally, around the room, any final thoughts? Lourdes, any final thoughts?
No, just thank you.
Thank you. Jorge, any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, just a quick one. You kind of addressed it, but again, and I'm sorry I missed the first part, but especially when dealing with senior personnel, and this is just in general for me, and again, most of my experiences in the military,
Sure.
addressing things at the lowest level, right? Start with that initial conversation with that individual. Maybe you don't feel comfortable talking to that individual, whether it's a peer or superior or manager, finding somebody else that can help you have that conversation. Maybe another, a senior person that you trust, that you're comfortable communicating with. And again, but at the end of the day, not going immediately to HR or immediately, making it a bigger issue than it has to be. Again, it's just kind of a thing that we practice, addressing issues at the lowest level. And it usually smooths out a lot easier than going high and right immediately.
Yeah, follow that chain of command. So definitely. Kent, any final thoughts or comments?
Yeah, being brave, because good communication can sometimes be very stressful. So being brave is also important.
Yeah, having the courage to begin and approaching that individual candidly and openly with respect, obviously. Momina, any final thoughts? Yes, any final thoughts or comments, Momina?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Victor, final thoughts or comments, sir?
Thank you for providing different approaches for dealing with difficult people.
Okay, awesome. With that, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Hasta luego. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.